So glad that you're here. Yay. Okay. So we're going to take a moment. I'm going to go over the props again just in case anybody missed it. So we have two blocks, bolster, two blankets. You can have as much stuff as you want, maybe eye pillows, all that stuff, if that's what makes you feel comfortable. If you don't have a bolster, no worry, grab some bed pillows. And if you don't have blocks, just grab some extra bed pillows or blankets because, like I said, these are mostly just to support us in different positions, and we can replace that with the other things that we have. And if you're practicing in a chair, you might want two chairs so you have something to lean over on for folds and so that you can lift your legs up um, for some of our more like reclined positions. In a chair, we're not going to be reclined, but you know what I mean. Um, oh, okay. I'm going to set this off to the side here. So, thank you all so much for being here. I know I've got a lot of friends and people that I've practiced with before in our chat. So, thank you so much for being here. It really honestly means the world to me. I'm so glad to be back teaching at least the one public class again. Uh, so, restorative yoga is basically a way for us to take rest. They're gravity assisted postures. So as we recline into a posture, or maybe not recline, but position ourselves in a posture using our props to support the body, the point is to kind of make ourselves feel as supported as possible so the body can start to relax. And then gravity can do its work, kind of pulling us further into a fold or back into a body opening position. So it's fairly gentle. One thing to keep in mind if you're hypermobile, make sure that you have a lot of support under you because we don't want to overstretch. If you're hypermobile, your body does kind of want to be as floppy as possible. So we just want to make sure we have support because no matter what position we're in, we want to give our body what it needs. All of our bodies are different and they're all going to need different things. So the cues that I offer are largely places to start. And then we can dial in or dial back from there. Thank you, Austin. So, um, I have myself seated on the mat. If you like, you can be reclined for our grounding. So if you want to be reclined, you can lay flat. You can have a bolster or a rolled blanket or a pillow underneath the knees. It's going to help raise the knees a bit so it's not as intense on the low back. If once you're down there and you have a blanket or pillow under and it still feels tight, feel free to place the feet on the floor and raise the knees up, maybe kind of allowing them to fall towards each other. And that's going to take even more tension off the back. If we prefer, we can be seated. I'm going to stay upright just because it's easier to talk upright. Or if you're seated on the chair, find a comfortable position. So that can be with the feet on the ground. If you like, you can have the feet on a chair in front of you. Anything that makes you feel comfortable and as relaxed as possible. So once we find our position, we might take a moment and notice the space around us. Notice any smells in the air, any sounds. So I'm in a city. So through your speakers, you might hear city noises, traffic, sirens. And so just be aware that might be coming through. But also take note of the sounds that are in your space so they don't surprise you. And then once you're ready, if you like, you can maybe close your eyes or find a soft gaze if that doesn't feel comfortable. And we'll take a few moments to notice the breath. So we might notice our inhale, our exhale. And we're not judging ourselves. There's no right or wrong way to breathe. We're simply noticing where we are in the moment. So we might notice if we're breathing in or out through our nose or our mouth. We might notice if we're breathing into the heart space or the belly. We might notice where else in the body we feel the breath. Maybe we feel the shoulders rising and falling, or the rib cage expanding. If we're reclined or seated in the chair against something, we also might notice the breath in the back body, kind of making us fall up and down. We might notice the pace of the breath, whether it feels fast or slow or somewhere in between. We also might take a moment to notice any thoughts kind of floating around. If we notice any, we might notice if they're coming fast or slow. We might notice if we have a lot or a few. And as we notice these thoughts, we might take a moment, acknowledge that they're there, and see if we can release them. It's easier for some than others. And if it doesn't feel easy for you, that's okay. If we want a way to kind of find a focus, we can always bring our attention back to the breath, again, noticing like we just did. When we're ready, we might kind of release the awareness of our thoughts and move into the body. Noticing if anything's calling out to us today, if anything wants our attention. And we might make note of those areas. Maybe if anywhere is a little tender, or if anywhere wants to move or stretch. Just noting those things so that we can be as kind to ourselves as possible today. And finally, we might begin to notice those areas that are making contact with the mat, the props, the chair, the floor, and allow ourselves to be heavy in these spaces, to release down into the mat, into the chair, into the props, all the way down through the floor, into the earth beneath us, no matter how far beneath us it is today. Knowing that it's there to support us. And we can allow ourselves to be held, allow ourselves to release anything we need to let go of in this moment. The earth can take it, it can hold it for us. And we can allow ourselves to just be in the moment. And when we're ready, we might return to the breath, noticing the inhale and exhale. finding a breath that makes us feel comfortable and supported. And knowing that throughout our practice today, anytime that the mind starts to race or get stuck or caught on a thought, we can bring our attention back to the breath to find ourselves in the present moment. And now we'll start to prepare for our first supported restorative posture. So we might slowly bring a bit of movement back to the fingers, the toes, the head and neck. If we're reclined, we might gently roll off to the right or left side. And taking our time, begin to slowly press up to a seated position. If we're already seated, we might introduce a little bit of rocking, maybe front to back or side to side. And then maybe slowly blink the eyes open. So for our first supported posture today, we're going to come into any variation that works for us of supported wide-legged forward fold. And I'm going to demo a few. So I'm just going to move my laptop out of the way. So generally, we're going to come into a wide-legged position, whether we're seated or whether we are on the mat. As far apart as is comfortable, I like to bring the belly between the legs to make lots of space through the hip joint. And we have various different ways that we can come into the fold. So if we don't have a lot of props around us, if we like, we can bring our hands down to the floor or the mat and use our arms to support ourselves as we hinge forward at the hips. If we have a bolster or pillows, we might see if we can stack them upright or stand them upright and then hinge forward, resting our forehead. And that might be how we feel comfortable. We can wrap our arms around if that feels more comfortable. We can also place the bolster or pillows down and hinge forward if that's accessible to us, resting the whole body against our props. We can do the exact same thing by stacking blocks if we have blocks handy, hinging forward. I also like to make a little table and create a bench so that I can lean forward and rest my arms, maybe stack my hands, place my forehead against that. So any of these variations that work for us. If we are seated, we can use our second chair, either turning it around so we're using like the back of the chair to support ourselves, or we can stack up our pillows and blocks on the seat of the chair or lean on our arms on the seat of the chair in front of us. Any of these things that work. We also, if we want a little bit more comfort, can take one of our blankets and kind of Superman wrap ourselves up to stay nice and warm, or place it over our legs if they're cold. There's no wrong way. And if you have any questions or need a little extra assistance, feel free to type in the chat and I'll go ahead and offer individualized suggestions. Feel free to try a couple different variations. But once we find the version that works for us, we again might take a few moments to return to the breath. And we might take a moment to notice how the posture feels in the body. If we feel a little tight anywhere, a little sore anywhere, can we make any adjustments to make ourselves feel a little bit more comfortable? Sometimes in folded positions, we might feel a little constricted with the breath if our legs are pressing into our belly, maybe pressing our chest into the face. Maybe you can find a neutral spine, so a nice long spine from the top of the head down to the bum. That might help create more space. We also might kind of imagine we have lungs right between our shoulder blades. We do, uh, but little tiny lungs that can expand and will kind of pull the breath into the back body, which might take some of the pressure off of the front body. But we will be here for the next 2 to 3 minutes. When we're ready, we'll slowly come back to the breath, noticing the inhale and the exhale, and start to introduce a little bit of movement, maybe slowly pressing up from our fold, maybe bringing some movement into the legs, ankles. From here, we're going to set up for our second posture, which is a supported twist. So, again, we have lots of options. I like to have my blankets handy for this because there might be a little bit of dialing in that happens near the head. So, again, I'm going to demo the mat variation first, then I will demo on the chair. So, for this, I'm going to have a few different options. First option is to create a ramp. And I'm going to do that by placing one of my blocks in this high position and one block in the low position. I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see. And then we can bring our bolster or bed pillows against this to create a ramp. We can also have this directly against the mat. Both options are great. And if you don't have any pillows, then you might want to stack a couple blankets here for the twist. We're going to bring our side body, doesn't matter which side because we're going to do it on both sides, our side body right up against the edge of our bolster. We're going to bring our hand nearest the bolster to the back, or the side furthest from your device. And then we're going to start to lean over. So you can see I brought my legs to one side. I like this deer-legged position first because it gives me lots of space for my belly. But if you'd rather stack your legs right away, you can do that too. I'm going to bring my heart space in the direction of the bolster or pillow. That doesn't mean that we have to have our heart space there. We're just kind of intending by bringing this forward shoulder forward. Something else that might be helpful if you have a larger belly like me, I pull the belly onto the legs so I get a bit more space to twist. Depending on how your body's shaped, that might feel uncomfortable and you might want to pull your belly away from the leg. Do whatever feels good. And then we're going to bring our front hand down as we come down and rest on our bolster, pillows, whatever we have. Now, you can see I got a lot of space here between my head for where my body's comfortable. So I'm going to grab one of my blankets and I'm going to use that as support. Also, I've got kind of short arms, so my front arm is dangling. So I might grab my other blanket and use that as support under my hand. And there we have our fold. If we'd rather, we can use the blanket over the legs if we're cold. So there are our options. Again, this can be against the floor or can be supported with the blocks. If we're seated, sorry, just washed my mat, so it's a little squeaky today. If we're seated, I'm going to sit on the edge so you can see me here. We're going to find a comfortable position with the legs where we feel like we can ground down. We'll bring our whichever hand we choose behind us, either onto the back of the chair or behind us on the bum. Our opposite hand can go either against the thigh, or as we twist, we can bring it over, whatever feels comfortable. But we're going to ground down through the sit bones, find a little bit of length, and we're going to press into our twist, only going as far as we're comfortable. And we'll take a few deep breaths here. So whether we're lying on the mat or seated in our chair, we'll take a few moments to let our breath settle once we come into position. Sometimes I like to take a few breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, releasing with a sigh, or maybe a vocalization, just to kind of let go of any residual tension in the shoulders, in the body. And then find my way to whatever breath feels natural for me. Again, we'll be here for about 2 or 3 minutes. Feel free to adjust the legs however you need, especially if you're on the mat. You can stack the legs, you can keep them in deer. Maybe you put one of the pillows or blankets between the knees if that feels good. You have plenty of space to adjust here. When we're ready, we'll slowly come back to the breath, noticing the inhale and exhale. And we're going to prepare ourselves to transition to the opposite side. So we have a few options. If we're reclined, we can either roll over or we can set up the props on the opposite side of the mat, whatever feels more comfortable. So either way, we're going to press up softly. And then maybe we kind of roll onto the bum, lifting the knees, and then resting on the opposite side. And remember, we can do slightly different variations. We might need more or less head support on this side. Our bodies aren't perfectly symmetrical. Our needs aren't symmetrical. Do what you need on this side. Or we can build our props on the other side and then come down exactly the same way, in the same manner, not necessarily the same way. If we're seated, we'll gently unfold, maybe lifting the arms, floating forward. I like to take maybe a couple shoulder rolls or any movement through the spine that I find helpful. And then we'll come into the twist on the opposite side. So opposite hand behind the bum or against the back of the chair. And then have the same options for the hands as we rotate from the base of the spine up towards the shoulders. Again, giving ourselves a few moments to settle into the posture, allowing our breath to return to whatever it needs to return to. We can take a few more of those breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, if that's helpful for us. Releasing with a sigh or vocalization. And then finding our natural breath, whatever that feels like today. When we do practice postures on both sides, sometimes it can be helpful as we're settling in to notice any differences between the two sides. Not because one is, quote, better or worse, but just because I mentioned we tend to have asymmetric mobility. And it's helpful to be aware of that so that we can be kinder to ourselves throughout the day. But once we find the posture, allowing ourselves to rest into the posture, easing into it. Remember, the heart space doesn't have to be against the bolster. We can just kind of intend that opposite shoulder forward, bringing ourselves into a gentle twist. And as we relax, we might notice that gravity helps pull us a little bit deeper into the twist, or it might not. And that's okay too. Be here for another 2 to 3 minutes. Welcome. When we're ready, we can return to the breath. If we're seated, we can gently release the arms, float forward. If we are reclined or resting on our side, I should say, we can slowly begin to press up from the mat, maybe onto our bolster or blanket, pushing ourselves upright. And then maybe bringing the legs forward, coming to a seated position, and we'll set up for our next posture. So, our excuse me, next posture is going to be Baddha Konasana, reclined supported Baddha Konasana, or butterfly posture. So, we can use our same ramp, or we can have the bolster directly against the mat as well. But this time, instead of bringing our side against the bolster, we're going to bring our bum against the bolster so that we can recline back onto it. We also want our blankets handy. And if we have an eye pillow that we like to use, we might like to have that handy too. I really like eye pillows in this position. So if we are comfortable like this, we can recline. I also want to offer an option where we take one of our blankets and we take it so that it's kind of fold into a rectangle, and then we roll the rectangle like a sausage, and then we place this under the knees, and then bring the soles of the feet together, knees apart. This can be our posture. If we want a little bit more, we might grab our second blanket and maybe take the end and wrap it around the feet to help hold the feet together, and then tuck the ends maybe under the knees just to kind of hold everything. Then we can pull our blanket up as high as we like and gently recline back. We want to make sure that our spine feels supported. So make any adjustments we need to have that support. Our hands can go off to the sides, palms down, palms up. They can be against the body. If we have pockets, we can tuck our hands in our pockets. That's my favorite. And this is a favorite of a lot of us who are neurodivergent, maybe bringing the hands kind of under the bum a little so we feel that weight against the hands to help us ground a little bit more. And then taking a moment again to let us come into our breath. Now, if we're seated, this is going to look a little different. If we're seated on the mat, we can bring soles together, knees apart, just like we did for our reclined variation. Also, maybe with our blankets kind of under the knees for extra support. If we're seated in a chair, we have a few different options. I'm going to use my bolster or blocks or maybe some pillows or blankets for option one. And this is putting it at the base to kind of raise the floor up a little bit. Bringing the feet together, knees apart. We're still getting the opening through the hips. I'm going to bring my belly between the legs just to make a little bit of space. We can cover ourselves with a blanket, maybe wrap the other blanket around our shoulders. And if we have a back, we can recline back, holding our hands anywhere that feels comfortable. Or if we have another chair and this is accessible to us, we might place the feet in front of us like we were sitting on the floor, except using the second chair as an extension of our chair to create kind of a floor area where we can place the feet together and the knees apart there. Again, we can use a blanket for a little bit of softness so we're not resting our feet directly on the hard chair if it's hard. But all of these are options. So choose whatever feels best for you. Again, once we find our position, coming to our natural breath, And we'll be here for about 5 to 6 minutes. And once we find that breath, we might take a moment and kind of scan the body lightly. Notice if there's anywhere that we're kind of holding ourselves in or up where we don't need to be. Maybe seeing if we can release the shoulders away from the ears. Let the arms be heavy, let the legs be heavy. And really rely on the support of the props to hold us in place. And around now, you also might notice that our body might be making some noises. One of the wonderful things about restorative yoga is that it helps our nervous system calm down, which means we're moving out of the the sympathetic nervous response, which is the fight or flight, and into the parasympathetic nervous response, which is rest and digest. So you might start to hear some kind of gurgling in the belly, things like that. No worries, that just means that it's working. And if you don't hear that, it might be because you're already in a restful state. When we're ready, we might slowly return to the breath. Again, noticing the inhale and exhale. To exit, we might stretch the legs out. Take any movement that feels good here, maybe rolling the ankles. And then maybe gently roll off to the right or left side and begin to press yourself up at whatever pace feels good. And we're going to set up for our final resting position, Shavasana. So if you do not like to be fully reclined, then go ahead and keep your support here and you can come into supported Shavasana. If you would rather be fully reclined, feel free to remove these props. Maybe grab your bolster and you can use it beneath your knees. If you want to use the support, you can keep that rolled blanket underneath the knees. We can cover ourselves with the blanket, maybe place the eye pillow over our eyes if we have that, or maybe a blanket over our eyes if we'd like a little extra darkness. And sometimes the pressure over the eyes can be very comforting, very relaxing. If we are seated, there's lots of different ways to be comfy in Shavasana. I like to take one of my blankets, open it up a bit, and then give it a nice long roll. So maybe the blanket's folded just in half instead of into a rectangle or quarters. We can have a bolster under our feet for a little extra softness. If we have that chair in front of us and we want to stretch our legs out, we can do that too. We can have our second blanket over the body. And then I'm going to take this long roll, place it behind the neck so I have that support behind the head. If we have a back to our chair, we can also lean back. We can hold on to the blanket if we want somewhere to put our arms. Or we can place our hands on our legs. We can tuck them beneath the bum. We can let them fall to our sides depending on what kind of support we have around us. So anything that feels comfortable. Once we've found our comfortable position, we're going to take a moment and notice our breath like we did at the beginning of our session. Noticing the inhales, the exhales. Finding a breath that feels comfortable. Allowing it to return to a more measured state. Sometimes when we're moving everything around, breath can get a little rapid again. Pardon me. We might start to notice the sensation of the body against the props, against the mat, against the back of the chair, the backs of the legs, allowing ourselves to really connect down into the props, the mat, the earth. Once again, allowing ourselves to be held and supported. Tonight we have a visualization for our meditation. It's a muscle relaxation visualization. So we'll start, if we're comfortable, with imagining ourselves in a natural space. And if that doesn't feel comfortable, then you can imagine yourself anywhere you do feel comfortable. But in this natural space, we might imagine ourselves laying down a blanket, resting against the earth or the sand. Again, connecting down through these objects, down into the earth, noticing the support that it provides, noticing how the earth beneath us kind of molds gently to our body, how the sand might mold gently to the body, so that we feel fully supported. We might notice the sounds in the space. We might notice if we are hearing the sounds of a forest, of a beach, maybe our backyard or our favorite outdoor space. Maybe we hear wind in the trees or the sound of waves lapping on the shore. We'll notice the scent in the space. Maybe the salty smell of ocean, the smell of grass, the dusty smell of sand. We might notice the sensation of sun shining down on us, warming the body. Not too hot, not too cold. Maybe we feel a gentle breeze. We'll focus on the sensation of the sun, noticing it first entering through the toes. And as we feel that warmth spreading, we'll feel the muscles relaxing, releasing. And we notice the sun kind of sinking into the body, into the soles of the feet, the top of the feet. Noticing the warmth also kind of rising up from the ground beneath us. Before we laid our blanket down, it was being charged by the sun, heated and warmed by the sun. And we can feel that coming up through the heels, through the backs of the ankles. And maybe we notice now that our feet are completely relaxed. And we feel this warmth spreading up through the calves, through the shins, the backs of the legs, the backs of the knees, the thighs. We feel it kind of wrapping around the sides of the legs as we feel the sun warming the tops of the legs. We can feel that relaxation sinking into the knee joint, into the quads or the tops of the thighs. Noticing both of our legs are completely relaxed. Feeling it spread up through the bum and the pelvis and the hips. The lower half of the body is calm, warm, relaxed. Feeling it travel up into the torso. Noticing the warmth first at the low back, how the earth kind of supports that area, and we feel that warmth spreading up through the back, through the mid back, up to the top of the back near the shoulders. And we feel it wrapping around the sides of the body as the sun warms the belly, the heart space. Noticing as we inhale, the belly rising to meet the sun, the heart space rising to meet the sun. How, as those muscles relax, the breath comes just a little bit easier. Noticing how the shoulders relax and pull away from the ears as the warmth begins to sink into the shoulder girdle, into the upper arms, the elbows, the forearms, the wrist, into the fingers of the hand. Noticing it on the backs of the hand, the palms, how the palms soften, how the fists unclench, the hands are soft and relaxed, just like the rest of your arms. Noticing the warmth moving up through the shoulders into the neck and the throat. Noticing it moving up through the back of the head, through the scalp. Feeling that warmth wrapping around, relaxing the muscles around the ears, the jaw, the chin, the cheeks, the lips, the nose, the eyes, the eyelids. Maybe noticing that little bit of light, that little bit of sun through the eyelids as they warm and relax. And how, as they relax, they feel heavier and heavier. Noticing the warmth through the eyebrows, the forehead, up through the crown of the head. Noticing how the whole body feels warm and relaxed and grounded and comfortable. We might take a nice deep breath, feeling the breath all the way up through the crown of the head, all the way down to the toes, out to the fingertips. And on our exhale, we let go, letting ourselves be fully supported, fully relaxed, fully comfortable. We'll be here for the next few minutes. Feel free to relax and let go, knowing that if you fall asleep, it's okay. And if you don't, that's okay too. we might slowly return to the breath. Again, noticing the inhale and exhale. If we're comfortable where we are, we can feel free to stay here. But if we'd like, we might start to notice the sensation of our body against the props, the mat, kind of come back into the room, knowing that we can return to this natural space in our mind whenever we need. We might notice the sounds of the space around us, the scent. And if we like, we might start to bring a bit of movement back into the body, maybe through the feet, the hands, the fingers, the head, the neck. Taking any little or bigger movements that feel comfortable or feel like what our body needs right now. And again, if our body needs to stay perfectly still, it can do that too. If we like, we might gently roll off the prop onto the right or left side if we're reclined. We might gently blink the eyes open if they've been closed. Again, only if we want. And we might slowly, taking our time, gently press ourselves up to a seated position. From wherever we are, we'll take 3 breaths together in a way that feels comfortable for us. We might bring the hands against the body or place the hands together at heart center. We might take a moment to thank ourselves for our practice today, for making this space for rest, for making this space to acknowledge that we are worthy of rest. And I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your practice with me today. It really does mean the world to me.